She said it so lightly that for a split second, my brain refused to accept it. We were standing in the kitchen, late afternoon sunlight stretching across the countertops, tiny dust particles floating calmly in the air, as if the world hadn't just cracked open. Her tone didn't change. There was no pause, no build-up. She simply stated that she was going out clubbing with her ex. And if that made me uneasy, she added, then maybe our issues ran deeper than a simple night out. I stood there staring at her, convinced I must have missed the punchline. I waited for a smile, a smirk, anything that would signal this was a joke taken too far. Nothing. Her face stayed neutral. That was when it hit me, this conversation had nothing to do with a club. It was about how insignificant my place in her life had become. We had been married for 8 years. They weren't flawless years, but they were real, built on shared routines, shared pressure, and plans that once felt solid and permanent. I was never the possessive type, and she knew it. I had never dictated her choices or controlled who she spent time with. To me, trust meant allowing freedom without suspicion. But the moment she said his name, something inside me shifted. This wasn't a random figure from her past. This was the man she once leaned on when life felt heavy. The man who knew her before responsibility, before compromise, before me. I asked her why. Not with anger. Not with accusations. Just a simple why. She shrugged and said he was visiting town, that he invited her, and that it sounded fun. She said she missed feeling young again, missed dancing without thinking about deadlines, bills, or expectations. Then she looked straight at me and said words that would echo in my mind for weeks. She said she wasn't going to stop living her life just because she was married. And if I couldn't accept that, maybe our marriage wasn't as strong as I believed. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't remind her of vows, boundaries, or mutual respect. I just listened. Somewhere deep inside, something heavy and final settled into place. I realized that if I had to persuade my wife not to choose another man over our marriage, then something precious had already been lost. Love doesn't survive on ultimatums. Commitment doesn't require threats to be honored. That night, after she went to bed, I stayed alone in the living room. The house felt unfamiliar, like it no longer belonged to both of us. I replayed every word, every shrug, every dismissive glance. I wasn't angry at her ex. I wasn't even fully angry at her yet. I was angry at myself, for accepting scraps instead of partnership, for staying silent to avoid conflict, mistaking quiet endurance for strength. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. She brewed coffee. Scrolled through her phone. Talked about work. It was clear then, the decision had already been made in her mind. She wasn't asking for my approval. She was informing me of my place. Either accept it or become the obstacle she'd step over on her way out. I asked her one final time if she understood what she was risking. She sighed, clearly irritated, and said she was exhausted from feeling controlled, tired of being questioned. She said she loved me, but love shouldn't feel like a cage. That word stuck with me, as if commitment was a punishment instead of a promise she once fought to make. When the night came, I didn't try to stop her. I watched as she got ready with more care than she had shown in months. I noticed the perfume she hadn't worn in years, the same one she used when we first met. She didn't ask how she looked. She didn't ask how I felt. As she reached the door, she paused briefly, almost expecting a dramatic plea or emotional outburst. I gave her none. I simply told her to stay safe. She nodded and walked out. The silence that followed was louder than any argument we had ever had. I sat there, not imagining what she was doing, but understanding exactly what this meant. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about respect. About choosing your marriage even when temptation is easy. About realizing that freedom doesn't mean ignoring the person who chose to build a life with you. Hours later, when she finally returned, I was still awake. She looked surprised to see me sitting there, calm and unmoved. She started talking, explaining, justifying, insisting nothing happened, claiming I was overthinking everything. I stopped her. I told her I believed her. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that she had been willing to risk everything we built just to prove she could. And that told me everything I needed to know about where I stood. I told her a marriage doesn't collapse because of one night at a club. It ends when one person decides their desires matter more than the partnership. When boundaries are treated as obstacles instead of protection. When respect becomes optional. I told her I wouldn't beg, and I wouldn't compete with ghosts from her past. If she wanted a life where my presence was negotiable, she could have it without me. She cried then, not because she loved me deeply, but because she hadn't expected consequences. She mistook my calm for weakness. She assumed I would always stay, always adjust, always forgive. She was wrong. Some endings don't come with shouting. Some end quietly, the moment you realize your worth no longer needs defending. I didn't leave that night. But something did. The version of me willing to accept half love, half commitment, and full disrespect was gone. And no matter what happened next, the marriage she once knew had already ended the moment she chose the club over us.